Hello and welcome to Nick Loading In, my commentary channel. For all of you who have been following me and stuck with me so far, thank you. I'm really sorry. I've got a lot going on in my personal life and I'm just going to leave it at that, but I'm here, I'm back, and hopefully I'll be more consistent with my content. Today we're going to go ahead and focus on obviously the big updates that have come out with Ruby Franke, especially in that whole case. That's kind of where I started with my channel to begin with. So we finally got some movement on Ruby's side. So that's what we're going to jump into, go over a little bit, specifically that statement made by her lawyer, and just weigh in with my perspective a little bit on a couple things. I hope to circle back to Kevin as well. I have a couple things I want to say about him and his situation and his position. Before we jump in, though, I do want to say that everything in this video is opinion. It is speculation based off of information publicly available. I do encourage everybody to go and formulate their own opinion, do their own research, be kind to others. I'm going to have some controversial perspectives. I know, and probably some controversial opinions in regards to how I view Ruby and Kevin, and that's fine. I want to hear what everybody else is thinking as well. Like, what do you think about what I have to say? And if you don't agree, what are some points that you can bring to the table? There is a span of from 2015 to 2018, I really didn't know or watch much about Ruby. I knew of her because I have a thing against family vloggers, but there's probably some things missing there. But based off of what I know and what I've researched, that's where I'm basing my opinions and my perspective. I've said it from the beginning in every video. Pretty much, I'm looking for a community in a way, but like a safe space for everybody to have their expression of opinion and thoughts towards these really intense situations that we've been covering. So anyways, with all that being said, let's go ahead and just jump right into the statement. I'm going to just kind of pick it apart, break it down based off of what I found interesting, and again, weigh in on it a little bit. So let's go ahead and take a look. Windward Law is making a statement on behalf of Ruby Franke regarding the pending charges in the Washington County 5th District Court, along with her thoughts about her current family situation. Our client is working with the prosecutor's office and anticipates resolving this matter quickly by entering a plea agreement with the court on Monday, December 18th. Okay, so first paragraph through this is just kind of basic. Monday, today, December 18th, between 11 and 2 p.m., 11 a.m., 2 p.m., I believe probably Mountain Standard Time, Central Time. Ruby should be in court at the 5th District Court and entering a plea agreement. Now, we don't know what the charges that she's going to be entering a plea into are exactly, and there's been several raised against her. But it is interesting the position that they put it in, and then, following it up with the rest of this statement. To me, it seems like maybe at this point they are trying to strike a deal, and I wonder if that deal in part 2 is going to result in Ruby testifying against Jodi, if that comes to fruition in any way. If Jodi ends up going to trial, I don't know. I haven't heard anything that, at least I haven't, on her side of things just yet. But Ruby I would say has inside knowledge of Jodi's whole operation, at least especially since 2020, when they became kind of poster children for her business. And Ruby got way more involved in being a coach and all of that stuff too, right? So that part's interesting to me, and I wonder how that will end up playing out, if we'll learn more about all of that throughout the day, even today, as things progress. Also, Kind of crazy that after 4 months, pretty much since the arrest, this is the first that we're hearing anything publicly from Ruby Franke or her legal team whatsoever. And the fact that they are, all right, first statement out, we're expecting to resolve this quickly with our client. So, anyways, let's go ahead and read on to the more, in my opinion, interesting bits, right? Ruby Franke is a devoted mother and is also a woman committed to constant improvement. Initially, Miss Franke believed that Jodi Hildebrandt had the insight to offer a path to continual improvement. Miss Hildebrandt took advantage of this quest and twisted it into something heinous. Over an extended period, Miss Hildebrandt systematically isolated Ruby Franke from her extended family, older children, and her husband, Kevin Franke. This prolonged isolation resulted in Miss Franke being subjected to a distorted sense of morality shaped by Miss Hildebrandt's influence. Okay, so when you first read this, I mean, I think the first opinion would be like, oh, here she's throwing Jodi under the bus. And I just, throwing somebody under the bus is like screwing them over so that you don't get in trouble for something, And so I just don't feel like that really applies here. I don't think that Ruby is trying to escape her reality. And I think that's where I'll end up touching onto some controversial opinions over Ruby. But I don't think that that's what she's trying to do. As we'll read later on in the statement, I just think that substantiates it even more. But, I think she's just calling attention to her realizations. From this whole statement, I really think that there's like a light went on for Ruby. A realization has occurred, I think. And I think there's been enough time now that she's been separated from Jodi and released from this day in and day out indoctrination. So I wouldn't call it thrown under the bus, but I definitely think that having Ruby quote unquote turn on Jodi and come to her senses, so to speak, is the last thing that Jodi needed right now, 100%. And so I think this is where I'll start getting into some controversial pieces, like I've mentioned, just because I'm trying to remove my biases from this and like my emotional responses to this. Yes, what has happened is abhorrent, and I'm not trying to diminish what these children have been through, and that these people who subjected these children to this type of treatment need to be held responsible and justice needs to be served. That's why we're all here. That's why I care. I think that's why people are following this case. I get that. But I think that in that, especially in the court of public opinion, and as these things swirl and fester, and again, there's a few years where I don't really know much about this family, kind of at the beginning of their journey on YouTube. But when those types of things are flaring, it's really easy for us to demonize a person and just focus in on that. And there are so many things going on in this whole situation that can't be lost in that shuffle, basically, and so I think it is important to consider the level of manipulation and influence that Jodi had over Ruby, and to what degree, which, I mean, for us right now, obviously is total control, it would seem like. But then if that's the case, then how the flip did we get to this point where a mother who, like, that's the other thing, put Ruby next to, perfect example would be, how about like the Galen case? I drive by that memorial often. I live in that area. And Ladisha and what she did to that poor boy. And then, put Ruby next to her, and Ruby's not taking this to trial. Ruby, you haven't heard anything from her, but I also haven't heard anything trying to defend her position, and justify her actions, and like Lori Vallow. I mean, I know that's way extreme and a little bit different of a categories to the second coming of Christ, but the brainwashing bit seems to be about the same. And Vallow defended her position all the way to the end. So, and most recently, you've got the Vander Ark mother whose autistic child succumbed to his disgusting treatment from his mother. And you put Ruby next to someone like that. Yet again, the personalities involved in people who took action knowingly, and I'm not saying that Ruby didn't knowingly partake or knowingly, understand what was going on, but the fact that now she's kind of removing herself from it after the fact, and like I said, kind of coming to her senses, to me that displays a difference in personality, and also continues to substantiate the fact that I don't believe that we would be here had Jodi never showed up in these people's lives. I don't. I think that at the beginning of their YouTube journey, maybe there's been a lot of controversy over some of the strict structures that they've implemented as parents, but I think a lot more of it, and I've said this before, a lot more of it had to do with their religious beliefs and structures and constructs than anything. And we don't really see anything in the police action or activity at their home, with the police reports and police coming over to do checks on the house and all that. None of that really started till 2017, 2018. Well, we line that right back up with their involvement in Connections and Jodi and their program, because I in my previous video, I've got proof and evidence of them being involved with members of Connections who had already been long members of Connections for 5 years, and they're on trips and doing all these things that are relative to the Connections program. And so I don't think you can ignore that. I just don't think you can ignore that. And then let's just read a little bit further here. During Ruby Franke's incarceration in Washington County Jail over the past few months, she is actively engaged in an introspection that has allowed her to reset her moral compass and understand the full weight of her actions. Ms. Franke is committed to taking responsibility for the part she played in the events leading up to her incarceration. Demonstrating sincere dedication to personal growth and rehabilitation, she has actively begun the process by reaching out to members of her family. Through heartfelt apologies, she seeks to mend relationships and contribute positively to the healing journey of her family. Okay, so this is where I was saying it seems to substantiate more and more that she's not trying to necessarily skirt her responsibility in all of this situation. No. I think it's fair that she shed some light on Jodi and put the spotlight back on her to a certain... I don't have any... See, it's funny because I have all this space for Ruby to try to have an understanding in all that, and it's because I view Ruby as a victim of Jodi. So I do not have that same ability to set aside my biases and maybe to try to understand how the heck she got there. And yeah, if there's something traumatic in her childhood, gosh, that might change some things if she was starting to seek help for it. But I have this weird feeling that she is so far gone into her own self-righteous belief system and whatever, or maybe this will be the slap in the face that she needs. I don't know, but she definitely needs it. So for me, I don't hold space for forgiveness or understanding for Jodi, because this has been a pattern for so many years, and it's not the first time that she has abused a child. And so her own niece nonetheless, right? yeah, I don't hold that space for Jodi. But with Ruby, like I said, I view Ruby as a victim of Jodi, and I'm not saying that Ruby is completely absolved from all of her flaws or what have you. I think her perfectionism does play a role in how she treats and parents her children, and I think it plays a part in some of her relationships and things like that, most definitely. But I do not believe that it would have ever manifested to what it has at this point without some sort of outside influence, aka Jodi frickin' Hildebrandt. Okay? And I want us to look at this, and at least for me, I've taken a step back and looked at it like this feels awfully like somebody leaving like a cult situation. And, you know, like with the FLDS and Warren Jeffs, if you know anything about it, those people are so sheltered and isolated. Like all they know is what they're force fed, basically, or fed by the community, by Warren Jeffs. He's the almighty leader. They don't know anything. They're cut off from the outside world. They're told not to associate with other people. Um, all sorts of, you know, crazy shit goes on in this group, and nobody talks about anything. And there's cover up after cover up after cover up, and arrests for some really just horrific things that are happening within. Even Warren Jeffs has been arrested now for his bullshit. But what I'm saying is, like, these people in these groups, if that's all they know, or that's all they're being fed for a very long period of time, that becomes all that they know. And I feel like that's absolutely kind of what happened with Ruby here. Is that, I mean, like I said, we clocked this back to like 5-6 years ago. She's starting to enter in, and then over the last few years, she's really taken a forefront role in the business itself. And I think that she was living this day in and day out, and I think that part of her disassociation with her family a while back was because, again, this systematic isolation. Nobody can step in if nobody's around to step in. Kind of like the twin flame situation that I brought up earlier. These kids, a lot of them, they've cut off contact with their families and their parents, and you see these parents on this, even if there's a disagreement. Look, you could go watch my other video about myself being trans, and my family being very religious, and was having a little bit of conflict over that. These parents on these documentaries for Twin Flames, they're out there pleading to have their children back. They accept them for whoever they are. They want them back. But that's not what these people are being fed in Twin Flames, right? And then it's this whole pressure to be involved every day, day in, day out. Only read this material, only be involved in this material, only consume this, only think this way. And the amount of time that Ruby was spending with Jodi, and then if we think about, oh, why the hell is she always over there and she's leaving the kids and whatever, she's like a puppy dog, in my opinion, to Ruby. Even the cellmate that was in there apparently with Ruby right when she first got arrested, saying that all Ruby could do was talk about being with Jodi, and that she couldn't believe that her friend and her were separated, and these crazy things, right? Like, you can't believe that you would be separated from Jodi in the situation that you guys found yourself in. It's like Jodi was able to kind of create like a childlike personality out of Ruby when it came to being a follower of Jodi. Anyways, and then she goes on to say that she sent heartfelt apologies to her family and everything, and acknowledging that, like, look, some people are probably still going to argue like there's no excuse, and I get that. But when you are in this situation, like I said, where you're completely isolated, you're cut off, and you're only getting certain types of content day in and day out, and you're being told this is how things are, this is the way things should be, you're probably having to do all this freaking like self-reflection or self-work under the constructs and structure of for this case, connections. I just, my heart leans into that side of that side of things. Do I think Ruby's a perfect person and a saint? Absolutely not. We can argue even further that they're adults, so both her and Kevin should have known better. Well, let's look at the whole Vander Ark situation and Vander Ark's son, who is just on the stand. He's 20 years old, and he told the prosecutor that he did not realize that the treatment that he was inflicting upon his brother could kill him. He's 20 years old. I know plenty of people younger than him that would know that if you are starving somebody, that they are going to eventually pass away, that you cannot leave somebody in a bathtub of ice for 9 hours. Right? Like, so I just, to me, it's a false bottom argument, because we have to consider the brainwashing. We have to consider the manipulation. We have to consider the isolation, the control. It's like a domestic violence relationship almost, but like in a completely different structure. The methods, the core of the functions are the same, but the structure itself is completely different, and the relationship is different. So let's go ahead and jump into this last little section. We'll finish up with that. It segues into a little bit on Kevin, and we'll round this guy out. Ruby is aware that Kevin Franke has filed for divorce. While she is devastated by the news, she acknowledges and understands his anger and reasoning. Despite the pain, she respects his decision and remains hopeful that, with time, she can contribute to rebuilding trust and fostering understanding within her family. Ruby has offered her full cooperation to help the children reunite with their father. Okay, so I want to take a step back, and let's just put ourselves in Ruby's shoes for a moment, and let's kind of fast forward to the point where we're at now, maybe within the last month. She's been incarcerated for roughly 3.5 months. She has been separated from Jodi now for that entire duration as well. So that means, like I mentioned, she's not being indoctrinated every day. She's not having to rely on her codependency to Jodi, which is basically what Jodi cultivated, this like dependency on her and her truth, right? That and Ruby, being that perfectionist, was trying to fulfill that as well. So now, a few months into everything, you're completely separated from all of that, and I'm sure you've received counsel, and I'm sure that you've received some other things during this time. So let's imagine that my perspective on this, and my opinion on Ruby's current situation and her current position in all of this is true. You've woken up. You've come to this realization, like, holy shit, like this was wrong. And now you're having to look at the destruction that you have ultimately created, right? Imagine being in that position where you had thought with every ounce of your being that you were doing the right thing and doing the best thing, and that you were completely and totally bought in 100% to the guidance of this mentor. And now you're having to come to grips with the realization, like, I was wrong. I devoted all of this. I put all of this in there, and I was wrong. And now, because of being wrong, this happened. I've damaged the relationship with my family, my children. My husband is now divorcing me. The damage between extended family and everything else is also present. Her sisters have distanced themselves from her and the position that she has found herself in. They've been isolated from her for years as well. I mean, then you also have to come to terms and grips with the reality of what you did. Like, now all of a sudden you can recognize those actions and those behaviors as heinous and atrocious and disturbing and concerning. And you're having to realize that that was you that was doing that, or at least allowing that to take place, right? I mean, the magnitude of that realization, that is so heavy. And I can't imagine being put in that position and just wishing with every ounce of my being that I wanted to just go back in time and rewrite the wrongs. And so I feel like that's where Ruby's at. And I think maybe this situation is hopefully it'll be a wake-up call for Jodi. I doubt it, but I feel like it's been a massive wake-up call for Ruby and Kevin. And I also think that this is something that is going to blow Jodi's shit up, and it better. She should never, ever be allowed to practice again. Her name and her reputation should be completely shot, shattered, and done. And that's what I'm hoping for. I mean, I've said it earlier, you put these two together, if Ruby flips on Jodi and she gets a lesser sentence because of that, yes, she's the mom, maybe people will feel a little bit upset about that because at the end of the day, like I said, she's the mother, but Jodi is the linchpin of the situation, and if she had not existed, we probably would have never got to this level. And that brings me kind of to my final point with, like, Kevin. Like, I went back and I looked at a couple different videos of Kevin, and all the videos of Kevin and Ruby together up to the final, like, 13 months, year and a half or so on Connections, when Kevin kind of took a step back in, like, February of 2022. His last videos, like, when you watch him, he becomes, like, an absolute shell of himself. Those couple videos that were on there of just him individually, it's really quite sad to see that person deteriorate. And I don't know if you've ever watched Stolen Youth with the sex cult and that happened on campus at this college, and this one particular girl got so sucked into this shit. She was a doctor, and the deterioration of her person, she was nothing of who she was. She's having to pick up all those pieces and put it back together now. It's going to be a long journey for both of them. But when I hear Ruby's words, the fact that she is, she's understanding where Kevin's coming from, that statement holds a bit of grace to me. Despite the pain you're having to accept the situation and the circumstances that you are now in because of your actions, and that you are just trying to put your best foot forward and trying to heal and mend what you can in this moment now. It's going to take a lot of time. Obviously, this fallout and the damage runs deep. But I think we need to, as the public eye is on these people, we need to respect them as a family and wish them the best in repairing themselves, and especially for the kids' sake, I think that Kevin was put in this position because he loved his wife and his family, and he was trying to do what he thought was best for his family and abide by Ruby's wishes, and Ruby's wishes just happened to be at the direction of Jodi. And so I think that they were both in a situation where they had these blinders on that were provided by Jodi, and now those blinders are being taken off. And I think that if all of their statements is actually the truth of how they feel, and that is their inward reality, then we will see that manifest and unfold over time as things progress. And I hope that's what we do see, and I hope that we can allow some space and grace for this family to repair themselves through this. And yeah, we'll see what happens throughout the trial today. Any updates I'll be trying to jump on as soon as I can. And yeah, I think that's all I have for us today. If you want to see more content like this, please like and subscribe. Goes a long way. I appreciate the support, and yeah, thank you so much.